Well, good morning and welcome to Bethel's Table Talk. And because of the quarantine, we're doing this a little bit different this time. I love the creative ways that we get to do things during this season. And so you're joining us on Zoom with Morgan. And so Morgan Patterson, we're so excited that you're joining us today. Morgan is a high school teacher. She has been part of Bethel for a long time, and we're just so grateful. She's an absolute fountain of wisdom. If you have a conversation with this woman, it will just blow your mind with the things that she comes up with and the knowledge that she has on so many different topics. And so, so welcome. Um,
You.
I got my tea. Do you have your tea? We're
I do.
ready. We're
I'm
talking about our
absolutely.
tea.
And we have similar mugs. Yours
We
is
do.
like mine.
And just for maybe we'll get like free gift cards from Starbucks for doing this online.
I have to say though, I have a Starbucks mug here, but I am a huge Rebel fan.
Oh,
So I have
shop
Rebel
local.
tea. I
Mhm.
have Rebel tea in my mug here. So hot
And I
cinnamon.
and I have distinctly tea on York
Ooh,
Street. This is pearl
nice.
cream. No, pear cream, my favorite. So good.
Ooh, nice. Nice.
But
Yeah.
gotta
So
shop local,
I guess
right?
yeah.
Shop local.
Definitely. I'm trying my best to spend as much money as I can. Even when I don't need anything, I'm helping others by spending my money.
There
So
you go.
shopping downtown.
That's actually a really good excuse that I could use. Like I can go into Watson's downtown and say, Chad, I am just trying to help our community. Now, I know
Yeah.
it's not open right now, but the day it's open,
I
right?
think I heard it in the sermon, being the church outside of the walls. And this is me, shopping and helping others and spending my dollars
Doing the
locally.
best I can, right?
Being Jesus with skin on. So
Got my Jesus purse and I'm ready to shop. Love
exactly.
it.
I'm being the answer to the store owner's prayers
That's
by
right.
shopping. Mhm.
That's right. We are being the feet of Jesus.
Yes.
It's so good. So this week we talked in the sermon about the fact that Pastor Chad was talking about this year is going to be the year of new, that God's doing new things. And we talked about how there's so many new inventions and so many new things that God wants to do. But then we had to take a look at the things that actually stop us up oftentimes. The things like grumbling. We talked about the Egyptians and how, or not the Egyptians, the Israelites leaving Egypt, and God would do something like profound, and then all of a sudden, maybe they had a couple days of wondering where God was, and they were just like, "Oh my goodness, where is God?" And the grumbling, and it just caused them to like walk around um, in the desert so much longer than they needed to if they hadn't had so much self-pity. We talked about self-pity and the destruction of it. And we had so many comments that had come in just of, what, that's so profound in this season that we don't sit there. I was wondering, Morgan, you are just like an outstanding citizen. Have you ever felt like you have been in a season of self pity? I can't see it, but have you?
Yeah. I know this may surprise you, but yes, I have. I can actually think of numerous times over actually my lifetime, but more of my adult life, I guess. Um, so yeah, just being stuck in really difficult situations and feeling sorry for myself. I have definitely used self pity numerous times in my life, and I don't want to go like into a long spiel of all the reasons why I felt sorry for myself and why you should feel sorry for me too. But the interesting thing in recent days, I did have a few years ago a situation where I definitely was feeling a lot of self pity and in a tough spot. And out of that tough spot, it allowed me to grow and learn a lot of new things that I had not learned before about myself. My degree's in psychology too, so it gave me an opportunity to learn some things at a practical level. And one of the things that I did was it mindfulness self-compassion course. And I had never heard of that before. And I was slightly concerned, going, oh, is this like really out there? What's going to be the case? But it was a game changer for me in that it was a course on how to notice my feelings, name my feelings, and then navigate them. And then this concept of self-compassion, I would say I'm a pretty good friend to those people who are around me. But what I noticed in this course is what I wasn't very compassionate or kind to myself in what I was saying. And so this concept of self-compassion really is being a friend to yourself and talking to yourself the way that you would talk to a friend who came to you with a problem. And so, I mean, speaking from the side of the Israelites, and that trying something new and being in a season of something new is, I guess, I had success trying something differently than just staying fixed in self-pity and this is hard and not going anywhere with it and it's everybody else's fault and it hadn't have been for this then I wouldn't have been where I am. But moving into this concept of self-compassion where it's like, yes, this is hard and yes, this sucks. And you need to be kind to yourself and take some space for yourself. But it also allowed me to be more broadened. It allowed me to see things from a different perspective. And it allowed me to move forward in the stuff that I was dealing with there. And so years later, like a number of 3 years later, or whatever it's been, that has stuck with me on how to be more compassionate towards myself and compassionate towards other people.
Wow. So, what do you think the main definition might be, or like the main point that would be the difference between self pity and self compassion?
I would say that self pity allows you to stay stuck. It just is. There's nothing. It's just stuck. Like it's a black hole of yuckiness. And that's I'm saying that without any judgment. I mean because I've been there. Where self compassion allows you to kind of crawl out of that hole and be kind to yourself and see yourself that you know what I am like everybody else having a hard time and a tough go. And then it allows you to either ask for help or give yourself the help that you need. Um, and so I would just say the difference in simple terms would be self pity is going to be like a you centered stuckness, where self compassion is allowing you to say, you know what, I'm like all the other humans on the planet suffering here, and I can reach out and maybe ask for help or be the friend that I need to myself.
It's
I don't
true.
know if that answers the question.
No, I like the fact that I feel like what I heard you just say is like, okay, so to paraphrase, that self pity makes you stuck, but compassion helps you to be able to grow, which kind of almost helps you to move forward. I'm actually reading a book right now from Danny Silk called Keeping Your Love On. And in just the first chapter, it talks about the fact that we are powerful people, right? So almost like the Israelites, like this victim mentality. I think when you're a powerless person, you're either a victim and you're completely stuck, or you're controlling because you feel like you've got a grasp for some sort of order right around your life. But being powerful means that I can move forward and I can do something to change myself so that I can become better. I woke up on Monday morning And I thought to myself, I'm like, oh my goodness, I hope that nobody is sitting there this morning um, going, I am a lousy, defeated, horrible self-pity person, and then you feel worse about yourself because you're like, I just heard a message yesterday saying that like, I'm sitting in self-pity, but I just don't know how to get myself out of this pit. And I feel like so many people, like, it takes a
Yeah.
lifetime to learn how to think, right? Or from wounds that we get. We learn, Dr. Caroline Leaf, who's a brain doctor, she'll talk about like these webs that have formed, negatively in our brains. And it takes a process of relearning how to think. You were mentioning somebody that you have kind of done some research about. Do you want to share us about him?
Yeah, so I decided, Santa actually brought me this book, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And I teach psychology. And so we've talked about Frankl in class before, but I'd never read his book. And so just a quick little bit was that he was a prisoner in the Holocaust. And so he lived through the Holocaust, lived through the concentration camp, but he was a psychotherapist before he went into the concentration camp. And so he had this unique perspective of knowing all of this stuff about the human mind and human behavior. But he had this lived experience of being a prisoner. And so he survived the Holocaust. But one thing that I thought was really interesting was that, and how it ties into the Israelites, was that he then was free. They were liberated and he was free. And he talks about what that was like, and it wasn't what he expected it to be. Like, you think that, I'm going to be liberated and then I'm going to be happy, but it's been months and years of being captive. And so he talks about going for a walk and, not being able to feel anything when he left the concentration camp. And he says, I wrote down the quote, but he had literally lost the ability to feel pleased and had to relearn it slowly. And what that says to me is that, like, and I know this is true for myself, but it takes a long time to learn something. And so to expect that you're going to instantly learn how to be happy or joyful or at peace is a tough thing to do. And you should expect that it's a process, not something that's going to happen just overnight. And so he talks about the other thing too, that he talked about, the liberated prisoner, the things that would inhibit them after they left the concentration camp, were bitterness and disillusionment were going to be the two things that would not allow them to experience the freedom from being let loose, I guess, from the concentration camp. And so I thought, oh, like, I feel like I'm learning so much. Not that I can for a second imagine the atrocities and what he experienced there, but that idea of how bitterness can keep us entangled is pretty powerful. And I was saying, I'd never done an Advent story before, or studied Advent, but of all of the week's lessons, joy was the one I couldn't get a handle on. What is the definition of joy? Is it gratitude? Is it happiness? What is joy? And so I was reading a different book called the Return of the Prodigal Son, and that book was like, ding. The ouch moment was they didn't define joy, but what they said the opposite of joy was resentment. And I thought that tied in really well with what Viktor Frankl was saying in terms of bitterness is not going to allow you to be liberated, and resentment is not going to allow you to be joyful. And so tying all back to your big question of self-pity, resentment and bitterness probably are in the pit of self-pity. And so just practicing small things, not expecting big things of yourself, but doing something new that you haven't done before might lead to more self compassion, which ultimately, even scientific research shows that self compassion is going to make you more emotionally resilient. It's going to make you have a better self concept. It's going to make you have more caring behavior toward yourself and to others and less reactive in anger. And so to me, all of those things sound pretty joyful.
Yeah. It's as you were talking about disillusionment, I was going to get you to unpack, what disillusionment would be. And then just as you were finishing up there, I just thought, disillusionment, even in this topic, can be thinking that you would wake up on Monday morning and think, I'm going to beat self-pity, or I'm going to all of a sudden, snap and be able to just live this perfect life. That's disillusionment, because truth is, it's a process, and there's steps that need to be taken. And um I think I look at my own journey, and I've been through lots and lots and lots and lots of different kind of like inner healing or whatever. But the thing that taught me, and they gave me a really good foundation for who God is and for who God sees me as, but my behaviors never changed, and some of the thoughts I had didn't change until I did some counseling that helped me to like unpack some of the thoughts that I had, and like taught me how to rethink, because I had 40 years of thinking wrong thoughts and thinking, the wrong way. But being able to think differently took some training. It took like some steps. It was hard work. It was really hard work, and it was consistent, to learn how to think differently. I'm sure you see that in high school students all the time, and all of these philosophy courses that you're teaching. I'm sure you have a lot to share on this topic. I don't even know a question to ask you, but do you have some thoughts on that?
Well, my assumption would be is when you were in counseling, they were probably using like cognitive behavioral therapy. Does that sound familiar?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so cognitive being the brain, behavior being your actions. And so our mind, like our thoughts and our actions are combined, right? And so I know that one part of cognitive behavioral therapy is like the ABCs. So the activating event, and there's the B, and then there's the consequence. And oftentimes we think about the activating event, that that person looked at me the wrong way or didn't acknowledge me on the street. And then the C is they must not like, that must mean they don't like me, right? But what we go from like A to C quite quickly, but we don't actually take a moment to look and see what's my belief there. And that, do you know for sure that that person doesn't like you, or is that what you're believing and assuming there? And so yeah, I think there's huge value. And I personally have seen a therapist. I feel like should almost come out of the womb, like a ticket to a therapist. Here's your ticket for when you're going to need it. And so, yeah, the nice thing is that, seeing somebody and talking through that is they just help parse your thoughts to say, hey, is this true?
Yeah.
Is this real? How could I look at this from another perspective? Yeah, and I found that to be extremely helpful, kind of going through your thoughts and seeing, hey, is this true? Are there other ways that I can see that? And I think like back to the self-pity versus self-compassion, is self-pity is only seeing something one way, where self-compassion is allowing yourself to see it from multiple perspectives. And yeah, I like Caroline Leaf too, And the one way that I've learned, just kind of the way the brain works, is that if you think of like an open field where a cow walks through it, right? And the cow walks, and the first time there's no real path, but then it walks the same path over and over again. And how quickly our thoughts can be that way too, where it's like, like you just it's easier to get to the end of the to your destination when there's already a path there. And so trying to create for ourselves, with God's help obviously, new pathways and new ways of thinking allows us to, yeah, to get to new conclusions. But I will say again, because I do not want anybody to leave this call to say that this is an easy process, right? Like even if you think about trucking through a field, it's a lot easier to take the path than to create a new one. And so know that all of this kind of stuff and getting out of self-pity is not going to be an overnight experience. It's going to take like some consistent effort on your part, and most likely it's not going to be comfortable, but there is a lot of freedom in getting out of the stuck.
Yeah. And I think setting up, I was just talking to my one sister last week, and she's trying to create a new habit in her life, and she's done some research and had some people, in who have done research themselves, saying in order to create a new habit in your life, you need to almost attach it to one activity, and then attach that new activity to another activity. So I'm going to have breakfast, and then I'm going to start working out. And then after I work out, I'm going to have my favorite tea, so that you've packed this new behavior. Like maybe you want to work out for 2021, but you attach that new behavior or activity to something that you regularly do, so it becomes new. So whatever you're wanting to change in your life, you need to add in a new activity. And so, Pastor Chad has talked lots about, having a gratitude journal, right? Because then you're always starting to see, the goodness of God, the things that God is doing good in your life. So attaching some of those new things, or those new steps of like, okay, so I'm going to eat breakfast, and then I'm going to ask, I'm going to do my devotions. I'm going to write out my thanks journal. And then I'm going to ask God, who can I bless today? Maybe adding that part into your life of like, I'm going to get, God cares for me, and I'm going to meditate on some of those things right now. But then I'm going to take it a step forward and say, okay, God, who can I now be a blessing to? So we can take it that next step forward to like a little bit of action, and getting outside of our situation too, just to connect with other people. Because I think too that when we connect with other people, and we see that what they're going through, some of that can be self-compassion for ourselves, because then we realize that we're not alone. And it's really good to know that we're not the only ones struggling, because I think when we feel like we're the only ones struggling, we really do become an island, and we really do, nobody else wants to hear my stories anymore. But if we could take the first step in like trying to have compassion towards somebody else, it actually flips it and helps us to have a little bit more compassion for ourselves. First of all, we feel better about ourselves because we've, been able to reach out to somebody else. But it also makes us go, oh man, I'm not alone, because they're struggling too, and I'm struggling, and we're doing the best that we can.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, yeah, that's really good. Yeah,
yeah.
and noticing, yeah, and I think that in that compassion side of it, and I mean, it's the first time I've been living through a pandemic, and so it's hard, and you have good days and you have bad days, and we're all doing so many different things that we've never done before, and we're feeling things. You and I think we're joking before too, is that um, you are stuck with yourself right now. And anything that you could hide, and mask up with a different behavior, like, oh, you're dealing with it now. And so this is an opportunity to just, again, like notice it, and then be kind to yourself. I was telling my husband something recently. I don't know, something that I was kind of like, oh, I don't like that part about me. I just noticed that this is what I did, and I was kind of down on myself. Um, and then he pointed out to me, he's like, you know what? Yeah, I can see what you're saying, but that's a big deal that you noticed it. And that one of the things now is that you have this opportunity that you don't have to deny that it's there anymore. And that's like the first step in dealing with it. And so for some of the people who are watching, myself included, is even just the first step of acknowledging that I live in self-pity is a big deal. And if you want to acknowledge that, wow, I do, and I'm not going to deny it anymore, and I'm going to take the baby step and the big courageous step of recognizing that, yes, I live in self-pity, and now celebrate the step that you've recognized that you do it. And then the next baby step is maybe to tell somebody, or journal or reflect where that's coming from. And then the next baby step would be to look at what you could do, reach out to somebody, read something, find some scriptures, and then the next baby step. But and like any goal, if you set, I did a few resolutions as well. And if I set out that tomorrow I'm going to be able to do 100 push-ups in a row when I haven't done any, I'm going to set myself up for failure. And by Tuesday, I won't have that goal anymore because it just doesn't work. Right. But if you say, tomorrow I'm going to do one push-up, then you're successful, and celebrate your success, right? So for those people who are challenged in this area, is tomorrow I'm going to be thankful for one thing, and celebrate that success. And then the next day I'm going to be thankful for two things. And if you have a hard time being thankful for two things, then celebrate you were thankful for one thing, and then just keep on moving. But know that the journey is going to be challenging, but it'll be worth it, and you'll be able to tell your story of how you were able to get out of that pit.
Yeah. I heard a message a couple years ago. It was a New Year's resolution message. And it was actually from Steve Furtick. And he was talking about celebrating the small victories. Because if we only look at the war, like if we look at he was talking about it was the Old Testament and like all the wars and all of the different different places that they needed to defeat, and if they didn't celebrate each defeat, then they would look at like Canaan, that they were supposed to, get this great big massive wall down, but they didn't, celebrate each place that they defeated along the way. And maybe adding more celebration into our life. I made it through 6 days of taking one push-up, or in this case 6 days of waking up and giving thanks, and 6 days of, what, I text somebody every single day just to make sure that I let them know I was praying for them. Oh my goodness, like big. That's big. That's so big. And live a life of like touching points on a very regular basis, or maybe it's every night. Maybe every single night we need to you know honestly put on your favorite song and have a little dance party and just go, I did it. I made it through the day, right? And maybe I failed here and here and here, but I didn't give up. I kept going.
Yeah.
I think we need to celebrate a lot more.
That's a really good point. It actually reminds me, and maybe it's a discussion point for another time, but in psychology, positive psychology, there's a thing called active constructive response. And so I was shocked to find this out. But the determining factor of a strength of a relationship is not how somebody responds to sadness and to you to sadness, or how they respond to a tough situation. But the strength of relationship is actually determined by how they respond to your good news. And so find those people in your life that are truly going to celebrate and not minimize your success there or your big, like for you, I was thankful for one thing. Find those people in your life that are going to celebrate you doing that one small thing and not say, oh, really? I did two things. They're no big deal. But when I found that information out, I was like, that's true. Because think about how many times I want to guard myself from sharing good news with the people who aren't going to celebrate with me. And so then that puts me back into this kind of stuck position. So I'd encourage you to find those people that when you tell them good news, they celebrate with you. And also be that person who is like, no, I'm going to celebrate that good news that you had. I'm not going to compare myself. I'm not going to put myself down. I'm not going to, but I'm just going to be there for that person that just shared, their first baby step and make a huge party, like you said about it.
I love that. And in ourselves to learn how to be celebrators of others' victories. That's such a good point that we need to be people who just push and push each other on and are cheerleaders for each other. That's so good. That's so profound. I think, okay, I have to make a confession. I was supposed to put a stopwatch on and I forgot. I have no idea how long we've been talking.
I have no
Morgan and
idea.
I can talk for a long time. We may need to have part 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah,
And you know what? Even now that I just had
we'd
to
be
say that,
totally kicked out of a coffee shop at this point if we could actually go in one.
it's true. It's true. I don't even know what we were talking about before. I was going to say something. I lost it because
Yeah.
we probably should actually wrap this up. Oh no, I know what we are going to say. Just in closing, really, we're I don't know, I had a conversation. I think it was our staff meeting or something, but it was talking about how to how to teach people how to be a good friend. We want everybody to be our friend. Um and that's part of actually the self-pity. Um like you haven't called me. And I forget who it was, somebody who said, there are numbers on your phone too. You can call me too. Every time somebody tries to shame you for not like
Yeah.
calling, it's like, well, you can pick up a phone call too. But just like the art of learning how to be a good friend, learning how to
Mhm.
celebrate. I love that. Learning how to celebrate each other, learning how to grieve with each other, learning how to, I mean, Paul talks about that in the Bible, like, you know, whatever season you're going through, I can celebrate and I can cry with you and I can do that, but we can only do that when we, learn how to be that good friend. So
Yeah, it might be interesting, like in the chat feature, for people to put, what they appreciate about a good friend or what makes a good friend. Because actually, being a teacher, I've had those conversations where it's assumed that you know how to be a good friend and you know how to do these things, but depending on your upbringing or depending on your personality, like some people just don't actually know how to do that and want like that little tidbit of, I remember one student, she said, I just don't know how to have conversations with people. And that makes me nervous. And so we actually found out that if you're in making small talk with somebody, the moment somebody raises their eyebrows in the conversation is like a point where keep talking about that. And so I mean, it's hard with COVID right now, but watch people's eyes and and then make
with
conversation that
masks,
way. Yeah, I know. So look for the eyebrows raising. Um, but yeah, there's people who are good friends or people you've noticed that are good friends. Maybe people can suggest some of those specific things that they've done that they've appreciated and made them feel valued, and kind of trigger us to do that one step um, every day to be a better friend.
Yeah. And don't make those comments go, you're right. This person isn't a good friend, but like, how can I be a better friend? Right?
Yeah, 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 and be specific in what you're acknowledging. Just
Yeah.
you're a great friend, but why are you a great friend? What is it? You dropped tea off for me, or you gave me a phone call, or you sent an encouraging message, or you just held space for me when I didn't know what to do, or you didn't judge me for being a little bit down that day. There's lots of things that I feel really blessed that I have an army of good friends,
Yeah.
and I appreciate each and every one of them
Yeah.
for the different seasons that they've got me through,
Mm.
um, and then they've taught me to be a good friend too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that'll be a really interesting conversation. I think this is going to be good. I look forward to
Mhm.
hearing everybody's comments and seeing what you have to say about how we can take steps and how we can be that better friend. So thank you. I have no idea yet how long this has been, but thank you for sticking with
I know.
us and listening to our conversation. I
Yeah.
think a good idea of how long we've been is my tea is pretty much almost cold, but you end when you have cold tea and you drink it with each other. So,
Yeah.
so let's pray for you and thanks for joining us. So, Father, we just thank you that you have made us powerful people. God, that you are teaching us how to be self-compassionate and just giving. And so, God, I pray that for everybody who needs to figure out how to make that first baby step and the second baby step, God, that you'd clarify and you'd show them how to make those steps. And that it wouldn't all become overwhelming, but that we can gather around each other and be vulnerable to open up and say, my goodness, I don't know where to begin. But God, that you would help us to be good friends and to actually receive and help and gain help from other people and the things that we're wanting to do. And so, Jesus, I just pray blessings over Morgan, and I thank you for her wisdom in this. In your name, amen. All right. Thank you so much. And thanks, Morgan, for joining us.
Yeah.
This has been awesome. We will do this again.
Thank you.